A lot of my confidence came from my athletic abilities, and I didn't have that at that moment. I had to find other ways. I ended up knowing more about the team that I had post my traumatic injury than I ever knew. There was a level of openness and vulnerability that was very, very different. We spent so much time teaching how to be managers, how to execute, how to delegate. Those are important management skills, but the leadership side is totally and completely different. If you want to check your own box, that's fine, but don't check other people's boxes.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now let's get it started. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I am your host today. And in the studio, we have Eric Reilly. How are you today, sir?
I'm awesome, Rick. I'm excited to see where this goes.
I am too. Let's see. So Eric, do me a favor. Before we jump into this, would you give our audience a little bit of a background on who you are, what you do?
Absolutely. I am, first and foremost, I'm a husband to an incredible woman. My wife is also a remarkable mother. She's also the editor of my books. So I'm very fortunate and lucky. I'm a father of 3 adult kids. I come from a large family. My dad was a pretty well-known radiologist and physician in the upstate New York area, started one of the first outpatient imaging centers. My mom was a remarkable woman. So my mother is my leadership model in my book. So hopefully this not only gives your audience an idea of a little bit about who I am, but maybe some areas that you can dig into and explore a little bit more. What else about me? So I say former athlete. I still try to be an athlete. Never an expert in one particular sport, but I was always pretty good at a lot of different athletic endeavors. Music has been a big part of my life. I've been a drummer ever since I can remember.
Nice.
And my daughter is quite an accomplished drummer. And I've spent the last 30 years in healthcare and pharma, leading teams on the sales side. And about a year ago that I took all the leadership experience I had, and I started my own advisory company. So I am now a author, keynote speaker, lecturer, and advisory consultant in the leadership realm. And that's where my life has taken me.
Love that. So you said that you said you took a left turn. What caused that? What was the impetus for that?
That's a great question. I don't know the cause for it. This is the way I'm wired. I typically, when I communicate, I don't necessarily like to tell people what I think or what I don't know. I can certainly tell the story and let people draw their own conclusions. So I'll tell you the story pretty briefly, which is 30 years leading teams. I think I've run the analysis. I think I made the company I work for $3.5 billion over that 30 years. I've led teams, hundreds of people. I also have some physical issues. I had a pretty traumatic physical experience almost 10 years ago. It changed my life, and we can certainly go down that road as well. And the company that I work for, make a long story short, I would say prior to 2019, right around the COVID time, I would go toe to toe with anybody and say that was the greatest private organization on the face of the planet. It's a large company. It changed dramatically. The leadership changed. It went from being a supportive organization to kind of being a micromanagement organization. And with my physical issues that I had from a traumatic injury, I had difficulty. I didn't have difficulty doing the job or leading people or leading teams. I had difficulty doing it the way that the company wanted the leadership job to be micromanaged. So I've done rehab 2 to 3 days a week for the last 10 years.
Wow.
And they changed my geographic area. I ended up having to work hours and hours away from home. And it was a struggle. And I had complications because of this injury for the last 10 years. And I picked up a new boss. And my complications to that person was really just a complication to them, I think, in getting revenue and checking the boxes. And so while I still continued to make a ton of money for the company, and I led the team, if you ask any member of the team, they got everything that they needed. And my life became very difficult. I needed an accommodation. I needed to work a little bit more virtually so I could do my rehab. My new boss was asking me to do everything in my job and their job, and including they wanted me to run like a national level meeting, which was my boss's meeting. And I said, listen, if you want me to do that, I don't think you understand all the additional stuff you're asking me to do. If you want me to do this, I'll do my best at it. And I did. Last April, we had the meeting. I brought in a guest speaker. I don't know if you ever talked to the Iron Cowboy, James Lawrence. He's an incredible athlete. He's a guest speaker. I ran this meeting from soup to nuts. 8 hours after the meeting, I got a phone call that said, Eric, today's your last day working here.
Wow. Did they give a
Wow.
why?
I asked, and the short answer is we don't have to tell you. You're an at-will employee. And they made it even sound like they're not allowed to tell me.
Wow.
And so I felt like I left a lot of my employees high and dry. Some of them kind of, it wasn't, I would say that it wasn't necessarily a surprise. I could hardly believe that they actually would do something like that. But the way the company was evolving, it didn't shock me. I think my wife and my kids took it a hell of a lot harder than I took it. I didn't take it great. It took me a little bit of time to get back on my feet. I've had a fair amount of left turns in my life, and that
Sure.
was definitely a left turn. It's hard when you feel like you've given your heart and soul to an organization, and one that I kind of grew up in the business world and I love to death. Yeah. So no, I didn't really get an explanation or a why that was, let's just say, credible or satisfied any curiosity whatsoever.
Yeah, that's painful. That's painful. I want to work a little bit backwards. So, just so our guests have some, or our audience has some context, and if you don't mind, can you go into that story about what happened, 10 years ago, that traumatic situation?
I'm happy to. And this has become part of my life and story. I have a talk and a lecture on it. And it's, again, kind of came out of nowhere. Your life can change so quickly in a blink of an eye. And like I said, I am a former athlete. I was always kind of like collegiate level, everything from basketball to water skiing, snow skiing, stuff I love to do. And the person that I spent a lot of time training water skiing. So not necessarily just like recreational water skiing. I'm talking like short line water, slalom water skiing, was also a cyclist. And I really picked up the cycling aspect.
Mhm.
I have an addictive personality when it comes to athletics. So I got into biking. I got into triathlons. So done a number of triathlons, and this event happened mid-September 2015. I was training for a triathlon. I was on my triathlon bike. It was an absolutely stellar day. I was going a little downhill, so I was definitely going fast. I was probably going 30, which is fast for a tri bike if you're going distances, but I was definitely a little bit of a downhill going. And I saw a woman that was going to come out of a side street to the right. And it's often when I'm on the right, that's what I always look out for because people can't really hear you. They can't really see you. Most people have no idea how fast you're going on a tri bike and they tend to pull out in front of you. So
Mhm.
I was looking at that woman and I was looking at that woman. I saw her look across the street and I could see the look of terror in her eyes. And before I knew it, I was hit head on by an oncoming driver.
Oh my
And
god.
she saw it coming before I saw it coming because my eyes were kind of on her. Yeah. So the impact was to like my left front because you kind of come this way. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't directly head on. So it was 80, 90% head on. And the impact definitely came in the front to the side part of my hip area. That's where the direct impact was. And then I turned, I smashed into the windshield. And that's the last thing that I remember. I remember getting hit. I remember turning. I remember smashing into the windshield. And I remember going in. It was weird. It was dreamlike. I don't know if you ever had a dream where you feel like you're flying and you can't control it.
Yeah.
Well, that was kinda like real life. It was slow-mo, and then that was it. I don't remember anything else until I don't know how long it had been, but there was a man there who was an off-duty police officer. So it had to be a little bit of time, and then the woman kept saying, "Don't die." That's what I was waking up to. "Don't die. Don't die. Don't die." And then the police officer was there trying to wake me, revive me, and he was able to get me attentive, and, yeah, that's when I had realized I just got crushed and I couldn't move.
Yeah.
Yeah, the weird thing is it was eerily quiet. I totally thought I was gone. I thought I was dead. I think the cop thought I was dead. I think the woman thought I was dead. I think the teenage driver thought that I was gonna die.
Mm, mhm, mhm. Wow,
Yeah.
that's traumatic. That's incredible. I wow. And so this is a big deal. Obviously this is disrupting your entire life. This is, unfortunately, I mean, these things happen in life. I mean, how do you get your mindset right? I mean, you went back, at a certain point and you're leading your team again. And you've got your wife and children that are looking to you. Dad, are you okay? Honey, are you okay? What's that journey like, for you getting back on, back on the bike, so to speak.
It was a long, painful journey. It wasn't all bad. I gotta say there were, and I can share some of this. There were definitely some gifts. I am not gonna say that I would like this to happen again,
Hmm.
but there were some gifts that I don't know that I could get any other way in life. So I guess maybe the first part is to talk about the long road to recovery. I had so many fractures, the doctors, they pretty much said we stopped counting. Pretty much every rib, everything in your back. I lacerated my bowel, I punctured my lung, and that was the easy part. The surgeon came in and said, "Look, we need to go in and operate now. I'm going to try to keep it not too gory because sometimes I know listeners can be very sympathetic to people suffering and struggling, and I don't want to be too descriptive. But
Hmm.
I think that would do it justice is a good part of the muscle from my hip and my back was taken off the bone, and they had to put it back. And they said, if we don't do this, you will die very quickly, and that needs to be done now. So that I would say even now, all the fractures and all the stuff that I broke, that was like a nothing burger. I was in so much pain from the muscle that detached from my hip and my back. So how did I get through that? I think the first thing is I've always been a person in faith. You almost realize you don't control everything. I know everybody believes different things. I don't really believe that I control. I like to think that I can control my life, but I don't
Hmm.
know that I really do. And I learned to let go of a lot of things and be. So people call it patience, and I call it patience too. It's that concept of letting go and doing whatever you can do one step at a time. And whatever happens, you got to let go and you got to deal with it. And that was not easy for me.
Hmm.
My wife helped me with that. My kids helped me with that. And thank God at the time, we had talked about the left turn I had in business and just recently that started this latest chapter in my life. Back when this happened 10 years ago, I was surrounded by, I had an incredible boss. I was surrounded by incredible leaders at the time, and they helped me. My road to recovery,
Hmm.
I kind of am still recovering now, but getting back leading my teams, I say this in all truthfulness, I was not even half the leader I was for at least a year, maybe more. And my team was patient, my boss was patient, my family was patient, my kids were patient. The other part that got me through was, I don't know, I've always tried to be a grateful person, but this concept of gratitude got me through it.
Hmm.
And I've learned, at least for me, the concept of gratitude is a very powerful and interesting concept. And I've learned that it also changes over time. I call them the things I'm constantly grateful for, and then the little things I'm grateful for.
Hmm.
And then the things that are really important are the things that you're grateful for in a period of time. So I'll give you an example. I was just grateful initially to be alive.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
la that lasted for about a week, and this is probably not gonna sound very good for make me look very good, but honestly, after about a week or 2, that wasn't enough, and
Hmm.
I don't know that that's totally unique, and I think most people are wired like that, so I needed to find something else that I was grateful for.
Yeah.
Couple months later, I was grateful that I could walk,
Yeah.
and then after that, it was like, "Okay, that's not enough. I need to find something else that I'm grateful for," and that kept me moving forward.
Nice, nice. You know, that's interesting. It's I think about that like just in the business context because things happen. I mean, the big thing that happens is for most of us is or for all of us was COVID. And being able to kind of walk through that with a mindset of understanding that you don't have the level of control that we all thought we had very clearly, but just being able to continue sometimes like just one day at a time. I think sometimes and we forget those little victories. My coach, she always tells me, she's like, Rick, you need to celebrate this little thing, and it's a matter of gratitude, and it also helps us to, I guess, it helps our nervous system, just to kind of regulate. Is that kind of what you experienced?
No doubt, and I think that that's where the I don't wanna say chasing something different than I'm grateful for, but I think that you're right. It's the nervous system. I don't know if it's the endorphins, but it goes back to honestly, I try to be as honest as I possibly can with myself, and it's hard for me to admit, but it's true. I stopped being great just being alive was not enough.
Yeah, yeah,
I felt like, okay, yes, of course I'm grateful I'm alive, but I still want more. And then I was like, okay, Now I can start actually a couple months later, I was actually starting able to move. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I am grateful I can walk. But then I needed something more to be grateful for because that gratefulness of being able to walk was kind of short lived. I'm like, am I ever going to be able to run again? Am I
Yeah.
ever going to be able to ski again? Am I ever going to be able to play basketball with my kids again? And I will say that I didn't like that part about me where I was always searching for something else to be grateful for, but searching for something else to be grateful for did keep me moving forward.
Yeah.
So maybe I do believe in balance, and I don't know if I struck the right balance, but I think that's probably what I'm trying to say is I struggled with admitting, okay, I need to find something else to be grateful for while still being grateful that I was still alive, which I was, but it just wasn't enough to keep me moving forward.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. I can understand that. I'm wondering, like, as a leader, as a leader of your team, how did you get I think for me, if I was, disabled in whatever way, I would question, people's perceptions of me, and I suspect that that might impact my ability to be effective. What was your experience?
I had that experience and that feeling, no doubt, and that it changed me dramatically. I think in a very good way. And I'll try to get to what you were explaining pretty quickly, but I think there's a precursor to that, which is the gift that I got from this was that I became much smarter. I will openly admit that a lot of my confidence in myself came from my athletic abilities. Now, clearly, you're not an athlete at work, but to me, it didn't matter. A lot of my confidence came from what I could physically do.
Mhm, mhm,
And I didn't have that at
mhm,
that moment. So I
mm,
had to find other ways to be more confident.
mm,
And that came through learning, being better, being smarter. I was never a really smart, and I'll still admit I'm not the smartest person in the world, but it was almost like losing a sense and your other senses were enhanced. It's the only way that I can explain it. I feel
mm,
like I naturally got smarter quicker because I didn't have the physical abilities I had before. I lost the feeling of fear of vulnerability. Vulnerability may not be the right word. I was always more of a cautious. I don't want to admit that I have these shortcomings. I don't like you were talking about. I don't want to admit that I'm not capable of doing things.
mhm,
That experience dramatically changed me. And it's not that I don't want to say that I didn't care. It wasn't a matter that I didn't care. It just didn't bother me anymore.
mm,
And I became really open and really vulnerable sharing with my team what was going on. I had a lot of people on the team that actually came to visit me at the house. I was in a full back brace for, I think, 4 to 6 months. And initially I was like, you know what? I'm going to be embarrassed to see these people. I lost a ton of weight. I think it was like 135 pounds. And I looked like I was gaunt. And I think, I think to Eric Riley, like 15 years ago would not have wanted that. And the one after that event, I was like, you know what? It is what it is. I got to stop being worried or embarrassed about how I look.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Does that make sense?
It does, it does, it does, it does. How did you what I'm wondering about is coming back from, just such a traumatic experience. And again, I'm looking at it from the perspective that, things happen in life. We have divorces, we have car accidents, we have these things. And, as a leader, people still look to us. While they might be empathetic to what we're experiencing, they're still expecting us to provide a level of leadership direction in order for them to do the things that they're supposed to do. And so I'm really curious about how what that path was like for you to get back on, to get back to a position where you could lead your team effectively.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you got to let me know if I'm answering it the way you are. What you're looking for in my answer, because when I hear the question, I'm internally hearing something that I'm hearing, and what got me back to being a leader. I do think that I became a significantly better leader, and the reason, yeah, I don't want to say like night and day. While I'm not the smartest person in the world, I think I'm a pretty business savvy person. I always understood how to get the business. I always understood how to help somebody. What I say are the X's and O's,
Mhm,
how
mhm.
to block and tackle.
Yeah,
What I probably was not great at was the human element of leadership and that vulnerability side. And I'll
yeah.
tell you, and to me, I've realized those are by far the more important components of leading people and leading teams. I ended up knowing more about the team that I had post my traumatic injury than I ever knew. I think they felt like there was a level of openness and vulnerability that was very, very different. And I ended up feeling like, you know what? I made the most significant consequential differences in their lives because I actually helped them with a lot of stuff that may not have been work related, like
No.
family relation. Not that I'm a marriage counselor or I've got the best marriage in the world, but I feel like people opened up and asked me for more advice. I think they always trusted the business advice that I got, but maybe they
Mhm.
were a little apprehensive or worried about going down the personal road. And
Mhm.
I feel like after that event, that's where I became actually a significantly better leader. I knew the teams better. I knew the people better. I
Mhm.
knew all their family names. I knew what their passions were, what their struggles were. I made their and areas that I wouldn't even initially ask them about. They would just start voluntarily sharing. Hey, Eric, I'm struggling with this. What do you think? What would you do? Any
Mhm.
advice? And hopefully that answered your question because I think that is what not only does that what helped me bridge that gap to getting back to being a leader for them, I think it gave my team exactly what they were looking for and what they needed, which again is part of me. I don't want to say I hate to admit it, but yes, I did get some gifts from this awful experience. And that was one of the gifts. I
Mhm.
became a much better leader. Not to mention the fact that I've never tried to judge a book by its cover, but man, did I not know what that meant until my cover looked different. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. It does. It
Yeah,
does. I think about that, perhaps from a confidence perspective, but there's, and you mentioned that you mentioned there were certain obstacles you had to overcome. But what I found most interesting is, as a leader, growing up, learning leadership, we were always taught to keep, personal and business separate, but you've integrated the two. Is that something that you recommend to other leaders?
I do. I recommend it strongly. It's in my book. It's two of the five pillars in my book are really built around human interaction and having those personal connections. One is belief and the other is humanity. I find that they're incredibly important. And I often say this, there's really no right way to do it, but there are some wrong ways to do it. And I feel like it has to be genuine. A leader has to be curious. I've seen people that try to relate to people to blend, I guess, to get back to your blending that work and family or work and life.
Hmm.
And they try to find out something about the life so they can squeeze more out of them out of work. That is not the way to do it. And I feel what does work is if you're truly just interested in the person and you want to get to know more out of them in life and help them in life,
Hmm.
don't say, I'm helping you here. Now you need to do X, Y, and Z here. That's where it's typically not a match. And I
Yeah.
think that's an element that I think business leaders really struggle with because to me that's the difference between management and leadership. And I think that we've really struggled teaching people. We spent so much time teaching them how to be managers, which is just the X and the O's, how to execute, how to delegate, and those are important management skills, but the leadership side is totally and completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And the question I always ask is, okay, look, you got a team of 16 people. If you're on a deserted island, how many of those 16 are going to voluntarily follow you? If it's not
Mm-hmm.
16, you're not a leader.
Yeah.
They're just following you because they have to, because you're paying them or they fear something. That's not really being a leader.
Mm.
So the short answer is yes. I think the connectivity between the personal side and the business side is really important. And there are many, many ways to do it, but just be careful about, yeah, just I want to find something personally related out of you so I can get more out of you. And people are perceptive enough to know that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Define leadership to me. Define what a good leader. No, let's say the yeah. Define what a good leader is to you.
Yeah, I think that at its core is what I just shared. I do think, and I love trying to make things simple as possible. A leader is somebody that people truly want to follow voluntarily.
Mm.
There's
Mm.
no fear there. There's no judgment there. They're not doing it to suit a means. They're doing it because they voluntarily choose to follow somebody. They believe in the cause. There's no stick. There's no punishment. It's something that they voluntarily sign up to do. And I think that's one of the reasons why, I mean, we talked about military before. I think that's one of the reasons why the US military is very unique. They sign up to do it. It's all voluntary.
Hmm.
And so that's the way I would define it at its core. What is, and this is in the book too, I do believe we are all wired. We're all born with leadership capabilities. I don't know that leaders are actually made. I do believe they're born. I think if you look at the commonalities of all great leaders, and those commonalities are what I call the pillars, we're all born with them. We're all wired to demonstrate them. I also believe as humans, we also have this opposing pull when stress, time, money get in the way. We do the exact opposite. It's the same thing with are you leading your children by teaching them to do the right thing? Or if time, money, and pressure gets in the way, I'm just going to tell you to do it. Just do what I tell you to do because I need you to do it and I need you to do it now. So does that make sense?
It does. It does. It does. One of the things that I've found about leadership is, it's a responsibility, that we have. I mean, alluding to, what you were saying about, sometimes, it gets difficult and, people want to just, step out of the way. There's a certain sacrifice, that leaders have to be willing to make. Leaders have to be willing to be wrong. If you're a leader and you're not willing to be wrong, to be corrected by the people around you that are actually experts in what you're not, you're not as effective, as you could be, as a leader. And I think that that's so important. I love the human side of leadership though, because we're not just leading, we're not leading robots. We're leading human beings that have lives, that have histories and that sort of thing. I think it's beautiful. I think it's really a beautiful, tapestry, that can be, weaved together when you've got a great team with great leadership and great, great members of the team following.
I couldn't agree more with you. One of the things that I talk about when I lecture, particularly with when I'm doing a lot of college lectures to college students, this concept of leadership. And I think that most people, they're not, if they don't actively think about it, they might miss the revelation. But if you think about your own life, any significant monumental event that occurs in your life typically involves a leader around you.
Hmm.
Either, and we just talked about a couple of situations in my life, whether the traumatic accident, and I had some great leaders around me. And then what happened to me in business in the last year in corporate America,
Hmm.
very different leader. I
Yeah.
wouldn't call that a leader, but I feel like the consequential nature of leaders in our lives are so significant and so important for our lives. And I'm hoping that by talking to people that brings that spirit out of them, that they recognize the power that other leaders have on them and that they can have with the innate abilities within themselves to have a positive impact on other people as a leader.
Mm, mm. So there's a level of gratefulness. I think you're suggesting that we need to really embrace like true gratefulness. It's like, okay, this person has really poured into me, and I had the opportunity to receive that.
Yes, and we are spending a little bit of time earlier talking about what the future looks like, and I believe this. I think there's a lot of data and information that is also going in this pathway. I think as humans, with the concern we have with AI, I think the concept of leadership, the consciousness that a leader has, is not programmable.
No.
And no, right? And that's the one thing that will always separate us and the people that understand and embrace that. But it all starts with, like you said, being aware and being grateful for that. The potency that a leader has is
Yeah.
where it all starts.
Yeah, yeah, and the individuality, I think, is really important because I look at you talk about families. I look at my kids. I've got 5 kids, and I have to lead each of them differently because they have different personalities and temperaments and that sort of thing. And it's something that evolves over time. As they grow up. I could have been authoritative and say, hey, you need to be more like your brother, et cetera, et cetera. But I really wanted them to be able to become the people that they want and needed to be. Like they wouldn't lead themselves at some point, but that's the nature of kids. But you know what? They came back on track. And like I can say, like all 5 of my kids, they are moving very progressively in the direction that they want to go in.
Which is awesome. And like we were just talking about, that's where some of the personal leadership aha moments transcend to work. And I'm not saying employees are like children. They're not. I would never say that. But there are some parallels, right?
Hmm.
You're leading your kids. You could either lead your kids or you can micromanage your kids.
Hmm.
And maybe there are some times that you need to manage your kids, depending at what level they are.
Hmm.
It's amazing. I mean, I've been trained for 20 years. I don't know if it's been 20 years, but trained on, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept of situational leadership. So what you're talking
Hmm.
about is situational leadership at home.
Yeah.
And it works just as well at home as it does in business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that there's been a lot of things, just in, I see a lot of crossover, running my home versus running my business. I mean, the skills are transferable,
Yes.
to running a small group or, whatever it is. I mean, the skills but
If
the
you
big
do it
deal.
if you do it right, because they both involve people, right? They're not
Yes,
exactly the
exactly.
same, but the transferable skill is if you do it right, you're not managing or micromanaging, you're actually leading people at home or at work. That's that to me, that's the commonality.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Speaking of AI, this is a big challenge that leaders have now. With this adoption, with this rapid adoption, that we're
Mhm.
experiencing. A lot of change is happening. A lot of conversations are happening. Give me your overall impression on AI. Just as it is, without even going into how we need to lead teams with respect to it.
Yeah, it's a great question. I guess you could say I have a love-hate relationship with AI. I think like most people, I do use it. Maybe not love, but I am fascinated by it. I find it very interesting. I don't really have a problem with it as long as it's a tool to help us, to serve us, to help us solve problems, not solve problems for us, but help us solve problems. And I really think where the value is, if it stays in a truncated fashion where it's an individual experience between Rick and AI or Eric and AI, and I'm choosing what to ask it, that's an individual user application. I don't see as much of the danger. Where I worry about it is all of a sudden we start giving AI what I call agency over people. No longer is it an individual transaction.
Hmm.
Now AI is telling you what to do, making decisions, making orders. And I'm very concerned about what that means at work for employees
Hmm.
and where that, it's a great question because I think our experiment with AI has taught us a lot where the customer is still king. And I think businesses will still realize customers are not, and look at like the call centers, customers are still not so crazy about, they may put up with an AI robot for a couple of minutes, but ultimately they're like, okay, I just need a human.
I need a
And
human.
I
Yes.
think I think businesses have realized that and they're sensitive to that. I'm not so sure that they're as sensitive to an employee or their employees being unhappy with how AI or what AI does to them. And that's my
Hmm.
concern is I see companies actually empowering is not the right word, almost like forcing or incentivizing their employees to use AI as much as they possibly can.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's a troublesome road and it'll take us down a road to giving AI agency over people at work.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about it. I see it in interviewing. I see it in the decision making, and it is very different than just a user asking AI to help me know something or create something or write something. Which that's totally different. I can see value. I see a lot of value in that.
Yeah.
And I think honest people can disagree as to whether that's valuable or not. But I think there is value in that and solving problems where you start giving them kind of control or what I call agency is which has already kind of started. I think,
Absolutely.
I hope it doesn't continue because I think there's varying degrees of levels of giving AI agency. I hope we stop at the earlier side of giving them agency and we go down that road. That's pretty. I think that's a big problem. And I think where I can maybe connect the dots. I think you're asking me or going to ask me before when I interrupted you about the other pillars. The other pillars that are in the book I believe really do a lot to help us as people insulate ourselves from AI. I didn't write the book. I didn't come up with a leadership philosophy to insulate ourselves from AI. I think it validates why they're the right pillars because I don't
Why
think they're
why
the
do you what do you
pillars.
mean by insulated from AI?
Well, the pillars are belief, wisdom, humanity, awareness, and guardian. I don't see an AI entity being able to demonstrate any of those pillars,
True.
right?
Mimic.
I mean, yeah. Mimic based on what they're programmed, but good luck having a conversation with AI about what they believe
Yeah.
or sharing what you believe, right? I mean, that's only going to go like so deep
Yeah.
or being able to demonstrate humanity or maybe wisdom over time. Right now, they have incredible knowledge. You have any discussion with ChatGPT and you realize there's not a whole lot of wisdom behind it whatsoever.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely.
Yeah, and guardian, which is one of the foundational principles in the book, which is this concept of protecting people. I mean,
Mhm.
to put it short, there's a lot more behind it, than just protecting people. It's this concept of great leaders are truly committed to others. And to me, that is a very important distinction between a leader and a manager. Managers are not committed to anybody. They just demand commitment. I'm going to delegate. I'm going to tell you what to do, and you do what I tell you to do. A
Yeah.
real leader is committed to other people. I don't think that's, and maybe you can kind of program AI to act like or say like they're committed, but
Mhm.
I don't see it.
No, no, I can't either. I mean, they at the end of the day, I mean, they are robots. They're very, 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 very very, very complicated robots, and I know that they're going to continue to advance them. But I can't imagine, that it would have the level of consciousness. It wouldn't have the level of consciousness period to be able to make those human like decisions. The question I
Fascinating.
was going to ask though was,
Go ahead.
as a leader, we're taking our teams, our companies into, new space, and we're taking our companies into space that's always evolving. And so there's not just the direction, but there's fear. We've heard, across the board, lots of jobs are changing, lots of jobs are going away, et cetera, et cetera. What do you say to leaders? How do you help them? How do you guide them to lead their teams like into this unknown forest, if you will?
It is very difficult. There's an easy answer, but it is incredibly difficult to do. And the easy answer is to tell the truth, not to
Mhm.
lie, to be honest, to be open. The reason why that's difficult, and I've experienced this 30 years, and it ebbs and flows. The level of honesty that I can provide is only based, I can be honest, but I can only be honest as much as the information that I'm being given from my boss or my
Yeah.
boss's boss. So if my boss is being lied to by my boss's boss, how am I supposed to sift through that nonsense? And this is something else I talk about is this concept of duplicity, which is probably one of my biggest corporate pet peeves, where managers or leaders say something and then they do something different. And that is what I call the duplicity effect. And there's way too much of it that goes on in business. And that is the problem. But it all does start with telling the truth, being honest. And you don't have to tell people like everything, every gritty detail, but you have to be honest enough for them to get the full picture. You
Mhm.
can't keep something from people so that they don't understand the picture.
Mhm.
You have to tell them enough so that they can make the right decision for them and their families
Mhm.
based
Mhm.
on the information that you share with them. And that
Mhm.
that's to me, that's the right thing to do. That does often that can result in some painful points for you as a leader. Somebody may decide, okay, I appreciate that honesty. I need to go somewhere else. Well,
Mhm.
that would, to me, that would be a relentless pursuit of winning. That might be a short-term loss, but in the end game, that is a win because I don't want to keep somebody on my team because I'm lying to them. I mean, I would
Yeah.
never do that, but I've seen a lot of that happens, and I don't think that that's a good dynamic. So the short answer is it starts with the try to guide them to what good looks like. Have the vision, have the goal in mind, lead them to what that is, but don't lie to them. Be honest, be transparent, and
Mhm.
it's not just what you say. I feel like I'm preaching to you. I mean, in general, right? It's not just what we say as leaders. It's what we say and it's what we do. And is there a match between those
Mhm.
two things?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's certainly valid. That's certainly valid. I'm thinking back to COVID. When we didn't have, again, we didn't have a lot of the answers. As in the leadership team. The what I see with AI though is the changes are happening so quickly. It's like I was looking at I think it was Claude. Last week they came out with the most advanced version of Claude ever, and then this week they advanced the most advanced version of Claude ever. It was just like it
Hmm.
was just a week, between these massive upgrades. And so, with these upgrades, it increases capability. It
Yes.
increases the ability for the software to be able to do what it does. And so when we look at we were talking about my friend, the mortgage underwriter, and it's like how do I lead her, with some level of confidence when I don't have all of the information? How do I make sure that she's, comfortable as possible in her job, being productive in her job, not going home worrying about, hey, am I going to have a job tomorrow? How do I do that?
That's a tough one. I think one of the things that might help, again, this, how should I put it? I don't want to say contentious, but it might create some short-term concern. I always start though with you got to face the facts with some questions, and maybe
Hmm.
that's the place to start. how much has she thought about what aspects of her job are replaceable? Let's just take you, your best friend at her best, and
Mhm.
AI at what we know is their best. What parts of her job are replaceable? I feel like asking those questions is I'm going to sound like I'm an advertisement, but it does get back to one of my pillars, which is awareness. And to me, the concept of awareness all starts from asking your, not before you self talk, it's self
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
So ask those questions. Okay, what parts of my job are replaceable? What aspects are, how much customer orientation is involved? If it's a lot of customer orientation and she's not really good at customer orientation, she should get better at customer orientation. But it sounds like she's a master at customer orientation. And if
Mhm.
she asks those questions and the answers are, well, 90% of my job is interacting with a customer and solving problems that are kind of nuance related. And I'm really, really good at that. I got to think by delving into those questions and getting those answers, my guess is that she's going to feel like, okay, I'm actually more comfortable. I don't think I can. Not only am I not going to be replaced, I can't be replaced
Mhm.
because 90% of my job involves human nuance, connection, consciousness, and I'm really good. Okay, is AI going to know the mortgage industry better than I do like that? Fine.
Mhm.
Yes. The answer is probably yes. But are they going to be able to apply that to customer Eric and customer Rick at the blink of a dime based on what their concerns are?
Mhm.
No. And going down those roads, asking those questions, it sounds like she's probably going to come to the conclusion, okay, I actually feel better.
Mhm.
I might need to make sure that I stay up and master how to engage with customers and solve their problems. Because
Mhm. Mhm.
let's face it, even you said it, there's no way she's going to be able to compete with what AI knows. None of
Mhm.
us are. I think we've realized we got to give that game up. That's not a winning game. Talking about the relentless pursuit of winning. That's not a winnable game for us. The winnable game for us is relating to customers, the consciousness side, the leadership side. Hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Good stuff. Yeah. So
Does that make
what
you
I
feel
heard you say
better?
is what I heard you say is we help our teams understand basically what we might call like the defensible zone, the areas where we know that AI cannot replace us, and then become experts in those areas. I think that that's
Yes.
brilliant.
And I
Let's
think it
talk.
de it depends. Yeah, just to connect that thought, and I don't think it I mean, I think you can translate that to any business, whether it's the mortgage industry or sales or healthcare or pharma, but it all starts by going really spending the time, which a lot of people don't afford themselves, is to ask those questions
Yeah.
and then answer them, and then I think it'll take them down the road to what they need to be better at and where, you know what, okay, I'm gonna have to give in. AI is always gonna be smarter than me. That doesn't really matter as long as people are competent enough to answer the questions and do the job. That's not what necessarily pays people.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? The one thing that always rattles around in my brain with regard to AI is just the thought that people's level of expectation just begins to deteriorate. It's like we've got AI generating music, we've got AI generating art, et cetera, and then that becomes the norm. And that's kind of scary. And as a created being, if you think about your creator, he took the time to, mold each of us like individually, personalities, looks, et cetera. And it's like we take that away, or
It
AI,
is.
or we don't appreciate it, I should say, as much. And it's a scary thought to me.
It's scary. It's ironic. I think you're right that we're so interesting as beings. But I don't know how to explain this. But you are right. We have shown in history a pattern to be conditioned to certain things that may not be in our best interest, and that's a scary thing too, right? Whether it's video games or just addicted to social media,
Mm,
and I'm not an anti-social media, anti-vid that's not the point that I'm trying to make, that you had mentioned the word getting conditioned to lesser and lesser expectations of ourselves. I think we've seen that through history, and it's a very interesting irony in us, how creative we are, how miraculous we are, but yet we do fall prey to being conditioned to some of the weirdest things on the planet.
we really do. We really do. We really do.
I don't know if anybody can help us figure that out or why that is.
Yes, yes, yes. I think things come to. I think we'll see things evolve. I think we'll see history repeat itself. again. I want to talk about your book. You want to share a little bit about your book with our audience?
Yeah. So the name of the book is Noble Leadership: Wielding the Sword and the Shield. It's the same as the company name, which is Noble Leadership Initiative. And we've touched upon it a little bit. And it all started with the journey that happened a year ago. And the name actually kind of came from my kids. They were really relating to the experience that I had. And one of them said, "Dad, there's like no noble leadership at all in what's happened to you after 30 years. That's just terrible." And I was like, okay, that's kind of a cool concept when you really think about noble and nobility, and it's kind of a play on words to where your podcast is the relentless pursuit of winning. The concept, and I try to make this really clear because it can kind of come across as sounding really arrogant. I'm not a noble leader. It's what I strive to be. It's the vision,
Hmm.
and I found it's a really cool. I don't want to say mind trick because that really shortens it or cheapens it, but it is effective. I mean, wake up every day trying to tell yourself you're a noble podcaster or a noble student or a noble leader. It's really hard if you wake up every day and say you're a noble student to be a really crappy student or start
Hmm.
giving your teachers attitude. And that's the other part. I wanted a word and a name that I could relate to that was easily relatable. And it was more of the spirit of I'm not there. I don't know that I'm ever going to truly be, I'll probably never truly be a noble leader, but I'm going to strive the rest of my life to try to do it.
I like it. I
So
like it.
that's where the name came from. And then I started writing, sharing all my experiences as a leader, the good, the really bad. I think I've seen just about everything and everything in between. And he asked me about hiking and sports. And I tell people I spent a lot of time writing the book in my head while I was hiking. And then I would write down all the pearls that came to me while I was hiking, and the memory came back. And then my wife would tell me, no, this isn't good. Or she'd tell me, this is great, but I need to fix it because it's not readable, but what an awesome idea.
Hmm.
So that was an awesome experience writing it with my wife, having an editor. Talking about AI, there was not a scintilla of AI that touched the book. From me writing it to putting it on paper to my wife editing it, there was no AI whatsoever. It all came from me. And it was kind of cool having my wife edit it where it wasn't an independent editor that didn't know me. There's nobody that knows me better than my wife. And the premise is we talked about before, where I believe there's a leader in all of us. It's a responsibility. It is something that we should recognize the importance of in all of our lives.
Hmm.
We're all born with the capabilities to be a noble leader, but we also have this selfish, self centered pull. It's okay to admit that. And it's a matter of unlocking what's within us and striving for the noble leader and kind of stiff arming all of those bad or evil tendencies, I guess you could say we all have.
Yes, 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 yes. I like that. I begun doing like affirmations, sort of like that, like in the morning during my quiet time, and it was interesting. I didn't believe in them. It was kind of like I don't remember why I started doing it, but I found that my language, like the way that I would describe things, the way that I would talk about things, it was actually coming from these affirmations, and it's like it kind of changed my perception on approaching a number of different situations. So I really value, that waking up. Hey, I'm a noble podcaster. I don't say that, but nonetheless, thank you for that. Where can people get a copy of the book if they want it?
They can get it on Amazon. I'm easy to find. The company is easy to find. It's Noble Leadership. It's a very cool design that my youngest came up with, which is a knight with a sword and the shield, and he or she is down on one knee.
Hmm.
And I say he or she because the knight is in armor, and the leadership model that I use in the book is the mother.
How interesting. Why is
Yeah,
that?
well, for very good reason. My mom was the inspiration. My mom is an incredible woman. She has changed a lot. She's unfortunately very frail. She has had just about every body part replaced in her. She's like the $6 million woman. But she was the toughest, most sensitive, smartest. And you talk about responsibility as a leader. I was fortunate to have her in my life. And again, I think if you think about it, going back to everybody's life, the impact that a mother can have as a leader. Now, granted, I think people would say that not every mother is a great leader, right? But a great mother is a great leader, has the most significant transformation on any being on the face of the planet. And I think that could be seen in great mothers, and you can also see the downside of mothers that don't actually unlock their noble innate abilities to be a great leader and what happens to their children. And so I walk people down that road in the book, and I use them as the model, the ones that demonstrate belief, the ones that demonstrate humanity, wisdom, awareness, and they are the guardians of, I mean, think about the transformation from a newborn to a fully powerful adult and the impact the mother has. I don't know that any entity on the planet has an impact like that. I know I've never had an impact on anybody like that.
Yeah.
Not to take not to take away the impact a dad has or another parent has, but the mother is something special about that ability.
I can absolutely concur with that. My mother's had an incredible impact. I didn't realize, the level of impact, but then I look at, some of my work, and I look at, some of the things I've done over the years, and, it definitely has my mother's fingerprints on it. And Dad was a very good leader as well, with his work. And I think they having the privilege of being able to learn from both of them has been excellent. But yeah, my mom, she's still doing the mom thing,
Do you still have
which is
both?
beautiful. Huh?
You still have both your parents?
Yeah, I do. I do. I do.
Yeah,
I do. I do. Yeah, I'm very fortunate with that.
you are very lucky. Yeah.
Thank you. One last question for you. So the name of the podcast, of course, is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. And, in general, most people can define what winning looks like for them. The difficulty that we face sometimes is that maintaining that relentless pursuit. What would you recommend to our audience in order to maintain that relentless pursuit?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that my answer, and I try not to be preachy and tell people what they should do or they ought to do. I can
Hmm.
tell them what I've done and what works for me, and hopefully that they can find a way to make it work in their life. So the question is, how do they continue to do that? How do they continue to keep that? Because sometimes days can be a little bit of a daily grind, right?
Life
And
happens. Life
life
happens.
happens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to keep going.
Yeah, so I would offer what I've learned is again back to that concept of balance. And it's the concept of balance in the way that I look at it is all through prioritizing what's most important. Forget check the box. I've lived a lot of my life in checking the box. If you want to check your own box, that's fine, but don't check somebody. I suggest that you don't check other people's boxes. And the balance I find has been most where if I can write down and think about the 3 or 5 things that are most important to me, and at the end of the day or the end of the week, I need to be honest with myself. Did I really spend the time that I should with these top 3 or 5 things? Or do I feel like, wait a minute, I spent like 10% of my time on these things or with these people.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I am honest with that helps me continue that relentless pursuit of winning, because that's what it's all about is focusing and prioritizing the 3 minor people, but they could be things in your life, and that's okay. Things or people, pick the
Uh-huh.
top 3 or 5 and reevaluate them every couple of
Yeah.
weeks. Am I spending all my time on these things that I say are most important, or am I spending all my time checking somebody else's boxes?
I really like that. I really like that. The focus, the focus. I've been accused of having too many irons in the fire multiple times.
It's hard not to. It's almost like, if you live in the same house for 20 years, you just accumulate more and more and more and more stuff. And I think,
Exactly.
like, we know the more you're in business and you've got experiences, it's just stuff accumulate and pile up. And it's hard to, sometimes you just got to kind of go through a filtering process, which I call a prioritizing process.
Hmm.
And that helps me focused on that relentless pursuit of winning, whatever the winning is for you. Winning might be money, winning might be, you know, might be purpose. Everybody's winning is a little bit different, which is why I love your podcast. There's not one right answer.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. I love that as well. I love your answer. Thank you so much for that. Thank you
You
so
bet.
much for being on the show. I really enjoyed our conversation. We went all over the place. Had no idea where we were
I
going.
did too. That's okay. I loved it. I love going for an open road trip.
Awesome. Well, we are landing the plane, so thank you so much for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure. It was awesome. And it's been great getting to know you too.
Oh, likewise. Absolutely. And folks, I want to thank you for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.